So a few housekeeping notes. You're probably wondering already if this webinar will be recorded. Yes, it will. And we will send you the recording afterwards. And so you can ask questions throughout the presentation, and hopefully we'll answer them throughout or definitely at the end. You can also catch us on Twitter at Inline Manual, and also email us support@inlinemanual.com afterwards if you have any more questions for follow-up. So what can you do with Inline Manual? In this webinar, we're going to look at what you can do in terms of creating step-by-step tours, tips, and tutorials. And we know that a lot of our clients use Inline Manual at the start, sometimes for support, but you can also use it to tell your customers about new features in your application, and soon you'll find that you want to use it for marketing and also sometimes for employee training. So we'll show you how you can create that content and then segment and filter who sees those messages so they get the right content for them. And after that, you'll be able to use our analytics to see how that content is performing. And it's that point where you start to track the content that you really begin to improve it and make it work for you. We're Inline Manual. We're a self-funded, bootstrapped company, and we've been working on the service since 2012. We originally developed it as a web design company to solve a problem that you may be able to relate to. You create an application for someone, and then you need to create some kind of end user documentation for each project to teach customers how to manage and use their custom applications. So we knew there had to be something better than PDFs with screenshots or screencasts, which were always very costly and difficult to maintain. So we came up with an idea, Inline Manual, and that's what you're here to find out about today. Let's look now at our customers and how they're using Inline Manual. Here's Team Gate. You can see this is the start of their guided tour. This is the step one of their walkthrough. This is a typical example showing this sort of seamless branding and design you can get with Inline Manual. And they've fully customized the look and feel of this. They use the walkthroughs to show people the main sections of their applications. So we have to remember, if you are developing SaaS applications, we know that you're working to make your applications as intuitive as possible. Yet there's a lot of terminology in every application that users need to get familiar with. And so this is another example of a welcome screen, this time with fresh sales. Again, a totally different look and feel. And they're using these welcome screens for new users, and they can get an overview, almost like a presentation in this example. And this is a very nice pattern to set up, but it's also a great way to continue, because if you start with new users this way, later on you can segment with returning users and make sure that they find out about new features or opportunities or offers, and sort of continue this sort of pattern. They keep their help tool down here in the lower left-hand corner. You can actually place that widget anywhere on the screen, and you can make it look any way you like. Here's another example, this time with SalesSeek. Again, totally different look and feel, and here we see an embedded video. I like to use video in tours and tutorials when there's something that's not in the UI, something you can't show just by simply highlighting it in the screen. So by embedding media, you can pull in some extra information, maybe best practices, or some type of warm welcome message. They're using, again, similar click-through orientation, but you're seeing a lot of variation of style because of the flexibility in Inline Manual. You can use the style editor, which you can click and change the color of the buttons, but you can also put in your own CSS. So we know that's one of the reasons people choose Inline Manual, because we have that functionality right out of the box. I'll actually be able to show you how that works as well and where you can do that. Here's another welcome screen, this time with Freshdesk. I like this, that they've used a photograph from the CEO. It's a nice warm thing, because people like to see people's faces. So it does bring another kind of warmth to the application as they're getting familiar. And here, another example of the customization you can do and embedding media. And they're also providing those click-by-click walkthroughs to show people how to get something done, where things are in the application, and highlighting some of the most important topics for them. It's always a nice way as well. We've got a skip tour link here to let people opt out if they need to. But if they opt out later on, they may want to access that tour again. So that's actually where the widget is helpful. Here we can see on crunch boards on the right, there is a widget, and they're able to launch topics from that widget. And so if someone's opted out of a tour before, they can still get that topic back again. They'll be able to look through the available walkthroughs and choose them when they want to. If you've logged in recently, you may have seen me welcoming you and inviting you to come to the webinar. So thank you very much for registering. And a similar type of thing, we're using a widget to have those types of messages such as release notes. So I'm going to show you actually how that works today. So many of our clients start by using Inline Manual to engage their users, increase conversions from trial to paid accounts. And they often focus on that first-time user onboarding experience. For example, launching tours for first-time users. After a while, they start to realize they can use Inline Manual to provide help where it's needed through contextual help and tutorials. And that helps their applications be, I suppose people at this point, they really do expect to be able to use the software by themselves. And it wasn't that long ago, people expected to bring everybody into a room for a full day training when a new piece of software wasn't put in place. And now people expect it to be self-help. And this helps people get things done and learn while they're doing that. So we're going to do a demo, and I'm going to show you a demo application so that you can see how we built these step by step. We're going to do something you've seen a lot of so far. We're going to create a welcome screen that will redirect the user to a specific page and welcome them to the application. We'll prompt them to click on a specific element to take an action to complete their task. It's mainly what you'll be doing. This will be the bread and butter of the walkthroughs that you'll be creating. We'll congratulate them at the end for finishing. It's always nice to have a good finish, and it'll be very clear to you when you're looking in analytics that someone has made it to the final step of a tour and maybe achieved a goal or something that you can track. And finally, we'll put this in our knowledge base, so again, they can get that tour later on if they want to. We can also get a custom URL. Someone who registered for today's webinar has asked how they could do that, and we'll show you how to get a custom URL that you can share with, for example, your support team. So let's look at that demo application right now. Here is our demo application. Let me just make sure you can see okay. So here's the demo application, and it's just a mock-up really. It doesn't do much here, but to give you an idea of how it works. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see I just opened up the widget. This widget by default says Inline Manual. I'll show you how to change that. You can change the color and the appearance of anything you see here. There's a search bar where we can search by title any content that we add into the widget. And you can have individual topics. So for example, we have a welcome message. Here's something you've seen already. You can see a welcome message, and you can have custom buttons. You can have them say anything you like and invite people to click on something to get something done. Here we can see a popover. The popover is prompting us to click, and the trigger here is when I click, it will advance to the next step. Let me just see. I think I've edited this since let me just make sure I've edited this since I actually did the demo. I want to make sure I've got the most recent copy. I'll actually open this up in a new browser just to make sure I do have the most recent copy. And you can see that we're here in Safari, so the player works in any browser that you like. So here you have the welcome message. I'll just refresh and make sure. You can even see as I refresh, the tour remembers where I was and invites me to click. So here we are. We've seen a backdrop pop up. The backdrop has dimmed the background behind the popover and draws our attention to click on something. Anything under the backdrop is not clickable, so we're able to control interaction this way. They can't really get anywhere until they take that action. We're on a page now where we've highlighted something on the screen and providing some more information about what we're seeing. And I've actually put a cover on in this case. I can't even click on anything in here. So a user really can't get lost when you have a cover over your backdrop. But I need some way to control the interaction, so we've got the next button is the trigger in this case. And I click on the next button, and again, we have the backdrop in place, but I have multiple elements. So this becomes more of a choose your own adventure, where you could actually give people multiple options. And you can also have each one of these options go to a different step in your tour, jump ahead to something or back to something. So we can actually take one of those actions to advance it or click on the next button. And fabulous, we're done with our tour. So that's a really simple example of what a walkthrough looks like in Inline Manual. Let's look back at the widget and see what's available in here. I have an article. So an article would be different than a walkthrough in that it may be longer content. It doesn't necessarily, maybe information that you need to share. In this case, it's release notes. And just like the popovers and the content you put in your walkthroughs, you can completely edit and put anything you want in this. It's a WYSIWYG editor. You can put in videos and images, and you can also have it show up in multiple languages. So you can have translation, and depending what language someone's using in the browser or in your application, you can serve them up the right content. And in this case, we've got a custom button, and it should, when I click on it, go to a tour. So that's actually what we're going to build today. We're going to build the new feature tour that launches when we click this button. So before we can even start building our tour, we have to install the authoring tool. The authoring tool, you're probably wondering, if you go actually to the help and support section after you log into Inline Manual, you can follow the steps to install, and it takes you to the Chrome extension installation page. So again, you're probably wondering, you just saw me using Safari. Yes, you can use Safari, you can use any browser for the player. The script gets installed on your site and works on any browser. But for authoring, you need Chrome and a Chrome extension. So that's just to clarify in a way. So let's go build this application. We're going to, as I said, add the walkthrough topic with the steps as I've outlined before, and then put it back into the knowledge base article. So when you have the authoring tool installed, you'll see it appears as an extension in your Chrome browser. And this is the site that I've already created. If you started, it would prompt you, the authoring tool would prompt you to create a new site. And we can think of a site as a way to collect your topics. So what we're doing is adding a new feature tour. Click create a topic, go to the walkthrough. By default, we'll have it visible in the widget, but this is one way you can control if you want it to appear in the widget or not. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is create a step that prompts people to click on something in our environment here. Make sure, I suppose, if it does matter where you are in your application, and I'll show you why that matters. First thing we'll do is click create a step. I'm going to say and we'll, after typing in the text, as I mentioned before, you can put anything you like in here in terms of adding in a video. You can paste in a URL from YouTube or a Wistia video. and it'll place it in there, or images, etc. And you can also edit the source of the document. So we will assign the element and prompt someone to click here. After initially it will place it at the top, but you may want to change the position of that. So now we will click that link and go to open a second step and say, so here we have, in a way, very specific steps. I think when I demoed this last time, someone asked, hey, no one wants to be clicking step by step. Someone's going to get weary of having to do that. But actually, you can add a step and you can redirect somebody to a specific page. So I've just added a step. I've browsed somewhere else. And what we'll do in this case, we'll do the step assignment again. What we'll do in this case is get the current path, and it will redirect somebody to this page just in case they haven't clicked the right thing. We could actually start on step 3 to make this easier if you want. So, right, let me just go back here for a second. One thing I forgot to do in the first step, fabulous, is to tell you about the triggers. Of course, if someone can click on something, but if you don't set a trigger, it will not advance to the next step. So we're going to use the default click trigger, and that means when they click on the assigned element, it will go to the next step. So I'll go and fix that for the step 1, select step 2, set the click trigger, and step 3. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select an element, and when they click into the field, it will jump to the next one. And assign element to the next one. And finally, this is a basic tour at this point. Let's actually see how it looks now that we've created it. You can see now that it will show up in your widget, and we'll be able to test it. I suppose we can, for the test, be on the front page, just so you can see the redirect. Sometimes it takes a minute after you've created content to have the tour refreshed, but I will preview the topic right in the authoring tool. So here we can see, okay, let's start here. Now click here, and we have the redirect, and it's bringing us to this step and this step. And as I'm clicking through it, I can see that the steps are obscuring the fields. So let's go back, open up the authoring tool, and edit the position of those. So this is one way you can preview and test and improve. What I'm going to do is, because I want to move the popover to the right side of the field, I'm going to click up here in the authoring tool to move the authoring tool to a place that's a little bit more convenient. And I can put it maybe to the bottom, for example. I can edit the text afterwards and do the same thing. Something like that. So, okay. So now we've created a basic new feature tour. Let's see what kind of improvements we can make. One thing I showed you before was this idea of move this over to the side, of using a backdrop. So we've mainly been focusing on the step options panel. I'm going to open up the backdrop panel and turn on the backdrop. So you can see by doing that, we've dimmed the screen, and now the only thing they can really see is what we've highlighted for them to click. And if I turned on the cover, as I mentioned before, they won't be able to click anything. So it completely locks down the entire screen for that step, not for the whole tour. So you know, use this power sparingly, because it can be frustrating for people unless it's very clear to them what you want them to do. So in this case, we're going to add the backdrop to these two steps. And I won't use it on the form step because I don't want them to feel like they're lost in the UI. I could actually, if I want to control, I could still, in this step, I could actually turn the backdrop on and override the way it looks so that it's completely clear, so they're not disoriented from looking at the environment, but they can't click anything except for those form fields that they're working with. So we'll do that with this step as well. Turn on the backdrop, override the way it looks, and change it so it's transparent. Okay. So I'm going to check and see if there's any questions at this stage. Okay. Fantastic. What I'm going to show you now is how can I add a link to that in the article. So what you saw before was that we had this release notes, and I clicked on the button and nothing happens. So we're going to add a link there. I'll click on the article that you've seen already. And here we have a custom button. You can add custom buttons with this button link option here. And when we double click, we're able to link to a specific topic, link to a step, or even deactivate a particular topic. So I'm going to link to a topic and select this one, My New Feature Tour. Great. So let's see if I save that. I've saved it, and say OK. And let's go back to our other browser where we were testing and refresh. I'll just try that again, not logged in a private window. It's not going to show me, is it? Sorry about that. Bear with me a second. It looks like we'll get that in a second. Here we are. Finally, after I refreshed a few times, you can see the tour is linked from the article now. So this gives you an idea of how you would have content appear in the widget and how to be able to finish those tours. So I want to show you something. When I look at the widget here, you may not want the new feature tour to show up in the actual topics list. So one last thing I'm going to show you in terms of managing your topics is inside your site, when you log into Inline Manual after you've created your site, you'll see here the number of topics that you have. You can see the topics that you have in the order that they appear in the widget. So this is a way that you could change the order of these things. That'll put the release notes at the top. And you can also make the topics hidden. The reason you might do that is that you may not want to have the new feature tour there. It's only relevant perhaps to users who are returning, or you may be segmenting it, like I said, segmenting it for some users. Or it may be a topic that your support team is using for a specific user group, and they don't want it to appear for all user groups. So that's why you would hide a topic. Any topics that you've created before are still available. You can remove and add them. So that's a nice way that you can actually share topics between different applications or sites too. So let's see what we've done so far. We built a walkthrough which responds to user actions on buttons or triggers. And we added a link to this walkthrough in an article in the widget. We prompted users to click on specific elements to take an action to complete a task. So we decided what to highlight and the right actions to respond to the right triggers. And we can also get a custom URL to support, for our support teams. That's something I was asked earlier. And you can see here in our topic list, if I want to send that new feature tour, each topic list has a topic ID. So you'll be able to go to the help pages, and I'll show you where that is. So when you want to get help, come over to help.inlinemanual.com. And you can see how to basically do any of the things that I've shown you today. So what you'd actually do is, launch. I'll send you a link actually after this. Yep, sorry. You'd actually take the URL of your site with a question mark, IAMTopic equals your topic ID. So you get your topic ID here. You can also see your topic ID in your list here, and you'll be able to send somebody a direct link to that or put that into your application. So let's look at site configuration. We looked at adding and arranging topics. Next, we're going to look at changing the appearance and changing some of the default text, such as the widget name. So let's look at the design. In this site, we go to Settings and Player Appearance. So I can see if I want to change the look of any elements, I click on them and they appear in the tabs below. For example, if I want to change the background color of the launcher, or if I would like to change the widget, focused on that a bit. You can change the position of the widget, such as putting it in the lower left-hand corner, as you saw one of our clients doing that, or you could put it on the right of the browser, so you can see what that would look like if we saw another one of our clients doing that, and change the background color. The other thing you can do, which is quite handy, is simply put in custom CSS. In our help pages, there's also quite a lot of help on and examples of how you might do that. So you can completely change how things look with CSS. If, for example, you have custom styles that you want to add, or you want to take in styles or inherit styles from your website, you can decide what sort of works best for you. So the other thing we want to look at is changing the text on a widget. In the lower right-hand corner, as it appears, it says Inline Manual, and we're going to change that to say Tutorials. So to do that, we go to Player Languages, and we're going to add a localization. In this case, it's English, but we're going to call this Tutorials. And if you, the trigger is the title in the lower right-hand corner. When we click on it, you see the panel title up here. So by default, it will use the same word, but you can also have separate words for that. And in the footer, you can also set a link. So if you wanted to have a link that said, you know, launch the support chat or something like that, you could put in a footer in there. You can also change the default text of the popover buttons, which control activity. So instead of end, you could say finish. You've got previous, next, and back. And we'll just save some of that these are the typical kinds of things you might do when you set up your player. So we'll refresh. And as I've said, I'm doing a hard refresh here, and I'm going to make sure that I've cleared my cache to list the right thing. We'll come back and check with that in a minute. So what else would you like to improve? You know, once you have the content there, you may want to show different content for different user groups, and then eventually see how it's working, who it's bringing in, and who's actually finishing tours, and where they're getting stuck. And that's where you start to get into optimization. So with segmentation, you can get the right messages to the right people and auto-launch content for specific user groups. A common example would be a welcome message for first-time users that people who are returning and been using your application for a while, they won't want to see that. It won't make sense to give them that onboarding experience. They need different content. Then you can monitor the progress with analytics. So we're going to look at our group right now, or sorry, our website again right now, and create a segment. We'll use these rules to set up a segment for new users, and then we'll auto-launch our topic for this particular new user group. So I'll go into my site, and you can see I've set up people tracking on my site already. I have one user already coming in through my application. I have some information about this user, and depends on what information you're sending from your application. But in this case, I've got information about the role and when they were last seen and when they were first seen. And so we'll create a segment for that user. Oh, you're already using it in automation, sorry. Okay, we will start again. So we'll create a new segment and call this new users, as you saw already. And we'll add a rule that the user was first seen and less than 1 month ago, whatever it might suit. If you had a specific, maybe you want users who were members before a specific time, or possibly people who haven't logged in since you launched this new feature or new version of your software, there'd be another reason you might make a different segment. So there is a very basic segment in this case. We'll go over to automation and we'll create an auto launcher. So we want this auto launcher to launch our welcome message, one that you've seen already, and we'll have it launched just for new users. So these are the other segments that you've seen here, like everyone but new users, or those are all arbitrary. You can create any segments and call them whatever you like. This is the one we've just created. So we'll click Save. So you can see the welcome message will play, and it will play one time. So users will see that once, and they can dismiss it if they would like, and it give them the message that they need. Okay. Right, so if you have people tracking enabled, you can get a lot more information about them. I spoke with a client even just this week who was really surprised that he was able to see quite a lot of detail about the users, and they've actually decided to target users from specific clients who are, users. Some clients actually would be, have multiple users in your application, and you want to send a certain message to them, and they're actually inviting these particular users from selected key clients to join them for demos and keep them engaged. And that's a really nice way to think about your your user groups and what information you'll be able to get. And all of this analytics and tracking is totally optional, and you can disable it. Although if you want to get any of these benefits, such as the segmentation, you will have to, this is kind of the part that you will need. Once you have your walkthroughs set up, this doesn't actually require people tracking. Analytics doesn't require segmentation. Analytics will continue tracking how your content is performing and where people are dropping off and if they're completing all the steps in your tours. You may find over time that people are stuck on a certain step and not making it further, and you can find out if that's to do with text or maybe the placement or how things are functioning. And it may also be information you want to report back into your product teams so that they can understand how people are using the application as well. So do you think you'd be ready to build it now? Let's maybe take a kind of a theoretical quiz, I suppose. What would you like to build? You've seen so far that no coding's required, but developers can extend Inline Manual. You've seen how you can update the content quickly with the authoring tool, and you can auto-launch those welcome messages and greetings. You can optimize and segment your content as well. And you can have quality assurance with version control and releases. We didn't touch on that yet in the configuration, but I can show that to you if you'd like to see more. Let's look at one last client example. And I think maybe at the beginning of the webinar, you may have been mystified a little bit of how these things were done. But I think if you look at this now, you might have an idea of how it would work. You've seen the demo. You see here a welcome message for first-time users. And maybe this is the type of content you would like to create. You'd like to make a walkthrough. And they're using this content to encourage people to complete specific tasks, and they're using a backdrop to draw people's attention to what they're doing. And they can also highlight things in the UI as they're giving them the orientation. So you remember you saw the cover. You may want to say, I just want to show you this now. Don't click on it right now. You can control the interaction while you're giving them that orientation. Let's use a cover. So I love this confirmation screen as well because they've got a sense of, hey, you've finished that, you've accomplished something, and you've got that done. So hopefully you feel ready now to do that, but maybe you have some questions. And before you came today, you had a few questions about how to use Inline Manual, and I hope we've covered everything in the sort of that was at the top of your head. I showed you how to add a new language by part of what we did when we created the text change for the widget, the title. And I've shown you how to create a custom URL from the topic title. And we looked at the backend maintenance and what it's like for administrators. And of course, you saw customization and branding. And in terms of how Inline Manual is different from competitors, Merrick, I wondered if there's anything you wanted to add about how Inline Manual is different from competitors.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Heather. Thank you for the webinar. To answer your question, how Inline Manual is different from competitors, like you mentioned, we are bootstrapped and we have a different approach, or I would say we have a different approach to dealing with the new features requests, where we are always listening to our customers, seeing what they are doing, and then as well trying to use this valuable feedback to build these features. And also what is, in terms of features, what we have, for example, that we haven't seen in others products or what our customers like is the release management, and where you can basically create multiple releases of different topics, and then you can assign them to different sites. For example, this allows you to, let's say, have on a development site and the production site very same walkthrough assigned to it, and then different releases. So basically that will allow you to continue editing the walkthrough on a dev site without affecting the production, because the production will be a specific release.
Okay, that's a good point. And definitely, I mentioned it, and I think if you are involved in using multiple like staging and production sites, this will be very appealing to you, that you could have a site for your development and staging, and you can have another site that is production, and you can keep a clear difference between the two. And as Merrick said, you could actually take a topic and create another revision and make it really clear what's on the production site is the correct version for the production site, and then have a revision available when you're testing on your staging site. So if you'd like to know more about that, we'll send you a link in the follow-up email here. So thank you so much. Let's see what types of what we did. Hopefully you're ready now to get started to install the authoring tool and plan and create your content, and then install on your site. And you don't have to install anything on your site until you're ready to share content with your users. So you could right now go and install that authoring tool and start making tours for your site. Of course, like I said, you won't be able to see it until you install that script on your site, but you'd be able to share it with your colleagues if you create an organization. So let's see what questions we might have so far, in case I haven't missed anything. If someone clicks out of sequence, can the walkthrough resume, or do you have to start over from the beginning? So that's a really good question. If I am in the middle of a tour and I suppose if I go away from the page, I'm browsing somewhere else, the tour would remember where I was and prompt me to complete it. So in that sense, it will try to keep somebody in the tour and running through the tour. If they cancel it, if they want to start it again, they would have to start from the beginning. However, interestingly enough, I'll show you a cool trick, which is the step launcher. So let's say in your new feature tour, remember I mentioned about, some people say, oh, maybe I don't want to start from that first step. We could actually start on the third step. We'll redirect to the form page that we're on. And we'll add a launcher, if you'd like to see how that works, for this step. So we'll add a launcher to appear. And what this will do is launch someone into this particular step that we're in. The step we're in is step 3. So you could think of it as 2 different ways to launch the topic. On one hand, they could launch it from the widget, or if they're already here on this page and they need to know how to do something, you could launch them directly into the third step with a step launcher. So I'll remember to send you the step launcher help page so you can see how that's done. Another question is, how are hidden topics shared? So one of the things we looked at was managing topics. I'm going to go back to the site, and on my site, I can see the list of topics that are available. When a topic is hidden, 2 ways I could share it. First of all, I could create a custom link to that topic ID. That's $IM topic equals the ID. Or I can do something like create a link from a custom, from a button. I'll show you an example of that. So here we were looking at the release notes. And I'm going to double click here on a custom button. And although that topic, it is assigned to the site, it's hidden in the widget, the only way that they can get it is through clicking that button on that in that particular article. But you can link to topics that way, basically. Is the color selected by hexadecimal? Can you show the design? I'll show you that again. Let's look a little closely so that you can see what that looks like. I'm going to go back into my site, go into the settings, and the player appearance pops up, the first thing that pops up. And I want to change the color of the buttons. So I can type in the hexadecimal right there if I like to. Pick something really garish, why not purple, sure, and choose that. So it'll update the buttons that way. So I can use a pointer, a click, or I can paste in the hexadecimal. And so it makes it a little bit easier. And so hopefully that's given you an idea. And I'm sorry if I went very quickly through the demo today. I will send you the recording and send you links to the things that we mentioned today so that you can follow through step by step in the help file and see how some of these things are done. All right, another question has just come through. How to do those multiple triggers? So we've actually seen an example of that, and I'll show you what I mean by multiple triggers. We'll look at that welcome message, and I'm going to jump ahead to this step and a redirect. I'm going to jump ahead to step 5 actually, and here we can see that we actually have multiple triggers. Let me open this up. We have a couple things. We have a next button trigger, which is just the default next button. And then we have these elements that are assigned. I'm going to go into the expert mode so I can show you what this looks like. I used a CSS selector that called in these 4 particular elements. So anywhere there was a close link, it was highlighting that close link. I can add as many triggers as I like. And in fact, if I click the I button, you can see that what's green here is highlighted green in the UI. And what I'll do is add another click trigger, and I'll assign an element. And we'll tell people to click on perhaps this up here. I'll go into the click I. Okay, we'll do the expert mode, and you can see this particular element is selected. Now, you actually can have multiple different types of triggers actually. I've shown you click, I've focused on that because it seems to be the most common. But you could actually have actions based on whether or not a mouse enters an area or leaves, or they click a key, or blur, meaning move away from, they click away or click their keyboard away from something. Key press is another example. So any type of interaction in your application you can respond to, and you can go to any other steps in your tour, or even deactivate a tour, if deactivate the topic if you need to. So that's a little bit about the triggers. What I'll do is I'll make that one of the things I sent to you in the follow-up email to this is the triggers. Okay, so thank you so much for coming along today. I feel like you've gotten at least a broad overview, but we can really help you when you come back with us to us with specific questions. And we're always happy to help. And we're constantly updating the help pages. So when you come to us with questions, it gives us ideas of how we can help you. All right, well, is there anything else you would like to add there, Merrick? Cool, maybe he's muted probably.
No, sorry, my microphone wasn't working. No,
Sorry.
I mean, thank you very much for the webinar.
All right, thank you so much for coming along, everybody. Oh, sorry, one last question. I want to make sure I answer this because it is something I skipped. I know if you've had to check out, that's absolutely fine. I just want to show one last thing, is how to make your site live. So by default, when you create your site, it is already set to live. As soon as you go to your install your player, you take the script, and that goes into your application just below the closing, just before the closing body tag in your application. That has to be installed possibly by your developers, so it's available throughout your application, anywhere you need it to be. And once that script is in place, your tours will be available. And by default, it's live. If I switch this to test mode, it won't be available. Now, I suppose you're probably wondering, I guess you could just start right now if you want to. Do you need a developer? Do you need a developer to start building? You actually don't. When you add a walkthrough, like if you started right now today and you went to install the authoring tool, I could actually build a tour for google.com. I could go to any website and start building with the authoring tool. The problem is that basically Google doesn't have the script installed, so you can't share it with anyone else. So to make it live, you will have to have the script installed. Someone's asked, yeah, I hope that's answered the question. Second question was, when you add a walkthrough, it's live on your site. That's true. If you added a walkthrough and your site was set to live, it would show up on the site. That's correct. If it was set to live and if you had the script installed, I should say. Cool. Thank you again so much. All right. I hope that was clear. Talk to you again, and I'll follow up in an email to you. Thank you all.